to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Better on that way. Indivisible, I said individual.
Norm, your microphone as well. Roll call, please.
Trustee Polly.
Present.
Trustee Lappin.
Absent.
Clerk Palovich here. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Here.
Trustee Kroll,
Here.
Trustee Reiner.
Here.
Supervisor Skibby.
Here. Moving forward to the adoption of the agenda, I do have one change. Our order of operations and closed sessions will be re-identified. Water litigation will be the first closed session, and the second one will be later. And outside of that, that's the only corrections to the agenda that I present. Are there any other corrections, substitutions, or amendments to the agenda as presented?
So moved to approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve the amended agenda. Is there support? Support. It's been moved and supported. Further discussion?
The only question I had is Presque Isle Electric and Gas asked us to do a letter of support for their operations. Are we doing that? Is that an administrative decision?
I can do it on the behalf, without getting too far into that, our ask of Presque Isle Energy and Gas Cooperative is that they sign a long-term lease agreement with Alpena Power for all their poles, because this is for fiber expansion.
Right.
And as much as we'd love to support that, High G only covers typically about less than 1% of our coverage area in our
In
township.
yeah.
But Alpena Power's poles would cover the other 99%. So I've expressed that, but therein, we can support it. There's no harm in supporting it, so. With that question, any other discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor of adoption of the amended agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed the same. Agenda has been adopted. This is the first opportunity for public comment. If you have any public comment, please stand to the podium, state your name for the records.
Mark Johnson. I'm a town resident and a former fire chief from Connecticut, and I read with great interest your intended discussion on some staffing options this evening.
We can't hear you very. Is it turned on?
Absolutely. Is it on? All set? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm a little concerned. I think looking at staffing options is a great idea. However, I think the cart is slightly before the horse. If you were to go on vacation, you wouldn't book all your rooms before you knew where you were going. And I think if you look at staffing options, that's kind of how you get it done. And in order to decide how you get it done, I think you have to clearly define what it is you want to accomplish. What are your response times? What ISO insurance rating do you want your community to have? What service do you provide to the taxpayers? And to define those parameters is very important, in my opinion. And that discussion, not a simple one, but should probably happen before you look at methods to do that. Then you can book your rooms now that we're going to Key West. So I would urge you to consider that when you have that discussion this evening. Thank you.
If there's anybody online that has any public comment, please use the bottom taskbar to raise your hand under the ellipsis of more, or shoot a message letting us know that you have public comment so that we can identify that. Again, this first opportunity of public comment are for board items solely. The second public comment is an open public comment. So if you do have any comment that's addressed to any of the business items therein, now is that time. Having given that opportunity for the individuals online, I still see no raised hand or comment to be addressed. Moving forward to the consent agenda. I have a question. I would like to pull, I guess it would be the treasurer's report for further discussion.
We need to pull the minutes too, because we have a correction on them.
And we need to pull the minutes of November 27th, a regular scheduled meeting. Outside of the minutes and the treasurer's report, I'd entertain a motion to receive and file the consent agenda as presented.
I'm so moved.
We have a motion on the table to approve the consent agenda minus the two topics of conversation. Is there support? Or it's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Seeing none. Okay, would you like this, since it's in order, the minutes, just address the.
Well, I
Oh,
need to do
sorry,
a
yeah, we
roll
need
call.
roll
Who
call.
supported?
That was trustee Polly.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. The minutes, sorry.
Trustee Reiner so wonderfully pointed out that on page 4, under Fire Department paid on call turnout gear, we missed putting the amount we are paying, so we will update those with the $7,464.
Okay. And my question as to the treasurer's report was on the cash summary, just so you know what I'm looking at, or on page 1 of 2 for the cash summary.
Oh, you're not talking about this treasurer's report. You're talking
No.
about the
No,
other
because the
reports.
payment of the bills,
Yep,
that-
yep.
that's kind of, we need to add that in the later agendas as well.
I don't know what you
What
mean.
are you talking about paying the bills?
When Lord, you send out the email with payment of all
This,
those,
these reports is what you're talking about?
isn't
Okay.
that under treasurer's report? Payment of bills, yeah.
It's included
one
in
of the-
my written report.
Yes,
Yep,
so-
yep, yep.
Anyway,
Okay.
yes.
So the cash summary report. is
So
what
the
you're
cash summary
talking-
report on page 1 of 2,
Yep.
under general fund, general water, the pooled accounts.
Yep,
We have a total balance of sitting as of the 20th of December of just over $1.7 million. I guess my question is to, obviously, there's 3 different accounts: general, public safety, and water department. What are the thresholds of average monthly expenditures? Because I would like to know what that threshold is, so that anything that's over that usability is either rotated into some kind of an account that has some interest bearing to it.
Mhm.
Because, you know, it's a fair amount of money that's sitting there garnering no interest.
So are you saying you think we should have a policy that says if a fund balance gets at this amount, we move?
Well, and I think it could be potentially a policy, but I don't know what our average expenditure and payment cycles are in regards to what we need to leave as a leverage or unforeseen expenditures. And so I don't know what that threshold is.
well,
Is it-
so just to give a little history on this, we've been talking about pooling these accounts for a couple of years and we finally just did it. So this is pretty fresh.
Yep.
I mean, we just did it in October and there's been trying to balance the bank rec, especially that big one, and there were a couple snags in it. I mean, it's good now. So I will definitely look into that. And,
Yeah, do you
but that's,
understand what I'm
oh, I
looking
absolutely
at? I
understand.
mean, do we need
No,
to keep $807,000?
And we could probably run
checking?
an annual report divided by 12 and figure out what our average monthly
Right,
expenditures are.
Yeah, break it down.
And then,
And then, you know, still leave some wiggle room in terms of
Well,
unforeseen,
and
but I would assume there's probably.
And the nice thing is
Return.
about that, the investments that I do right now are, that money is accessible. I mean, you don't have
Within
to
the day.
wait any amount of time. So it's like if we move it in there and we say, oh, we need 100,000, we can get it out. I mean,
Right away.
quickly, it's not like.
Yeah, those numbers, they just kept growing. So
Right.
it's
It's not like a
what's our
CD,
threshold?
but-
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
where
and it's
before we
like-
had CDs,
Right.
where it was a.
And right now, we're getting 5.25% interest on the investment, so that's pretty good right now.
Last I heard
So-
CDs are not much
Okay.
higher than that.
So yes, and maybe that's something we can work on and
Yep.
look
Yep.
at it for next month. So at this point in time, having addressed the 2 items pulled from the consent agenda, I'd entertain a motion to approve the corrected minutes.
So,
So do we have to do 2 separate motions or can we can't?
I'll make the motion on the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion on the table for the minutes
support.
and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed the same. Moving forward then to not that this one needs any business. We don't need to actually make any motion. I think the
Right.
discussion.
Well, we have to accept her treasurer's report because
So I'd entertain a motion to receive and file the treasurer's report with the conversation had this evening.
With the understanding the next.
Next
Meeting.
meeting, we'll look at what those operating thresholds are and look at potentially implementing. Is there a motion to that?
I'll make that
We
motion.
have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose the same. Moving forward, we have no old business. The first item of new business.
Flash.
Everybody else matters.
It's just you.
It's you, I would have to say. New business, Tim, you want to just take this, the resolution for property exemption?
Sure, this is the annual updated resolution as required by the Michigan State Tax Commission. It is recommended by our assessor Alan Berg. So format identical to last year's and the year before, just the dollar amounts have changed for the criteria for regarding the property
State.
guidelines. Thresholds. So just a motion.
So we don't have to read the whole thing.
No. we don't.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
I'll
to
support
accept
it.
Whereas, so we have a motion, was there support? Okay, since I was looking to split, so we have a motion and support. Making sure I don't add any whereas to it. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Okay, moving forward to item number 2, which is a quote from Flassen Vandenbrink, our operators, and are also our water department engineers. This is the application cost for our project, which has rotated from principally DWSRF, which is the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, into USDA Rural Development Fund ask. Once again, we weren't even picked to be in the funding range of the SLRF funds this year after being in a funded range last year to have our funds taken in the 13th hour to not even making the cutoff list. It would behoove us, since our infrastructure still has those needs and costs, to expand, which you see in there is, we started this process looking at USDA RD funds for the water meter project solely. The biggest difference between state revolving funds and RD funds are, as long as you apply, you can get rural development money, and you won't get bumped from any list. The only difference therein is grant write-off potentials the state revolving fund has. Those aren't afforded to USDA. And then also, instead of an APR of 1.875, it's an APR of 2. So it's a slight uptick in that. But this is moving forward. This had already been signed and I submitted it because all these costs therein to this proposal can be baked into the USDA ask. So it's kind of almost it's not a cost neutral, but it's folding it into the principle of a project. So
what was the original amount? Because you're asking for an additional 12,000, right?
well, the original was $5,000, which the board had approved. That's being rotated into this. So the total ask was actually 17,000 to do the scope of the project through USDA.
So a
But
total
that
of
that
17.
$5,000 is being that was a point of clarification I asked our engineers. And it's not for nothing. All that baseline work's just going into and expanding this. So it's not like we're a start stop on project A and now we're moving on to project B. All the funds are actually going towards project B.
So are you gonna pay this out of GL for professional
And
services?
contractual services, 592-537-801-000.
What was this?
Grand total cost?
No, what was the second set of numbers?
It wasn't 537.
Thank you. You kind of.
But is the grand total 17,000 or is it the?
This is the remainder. So what you see
So
on
the
the proposal here is 12.
Yep.
We already
We're-
have the 5,000.
We've already approved the 5,
Yep.
so
So
we're,
this is just for the 12.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the total engineering cost for project B, which was formerly known as project A, is $17,000, which is completely reimbursable through USDA.
So that 5,000 will be included along with the 12.
Correct. And it would be my recommendation, obviously, to continue down this.
Do you need a
path.
motion on this?
Yes, I would like a motion.
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion on the table to move forward with the expenditure of $12,000 to come out of 592-537-801-000 to the total cost of $12,000. Is there support for the motion? It's been moved and supported. Further discussion?
I just have one question. So I know you mentioned the water meter project. Is that part of this still?
It is still part of it. So we're taking, it's a hybrid scenario where our state revolving fund was for all the service lines was our principal ask, 2,600 service line replacements. That is now being rotated over because that is still our principal water loss, as far as we can tell, is still in singular services, not on transmission mains or the otherwise. So this is actually expanding the scope from just meters to meters and service lines. And then it's also looking at how we can fold in other potentials that were part of the state revolving fund and finding a happy medium. Those are still ongoing conversations, but they all have a positive impact to our water loss principally, and then secondarily to capacity.
So basically, this is for the service lines and the meters.
And meters are the two principal
Okay.
goals of this ask.
And will this cover the cost for those, or is this a portion of?
We can, yeah, no, that's the other thing. You don't have to wait for state approval like with the state revolving fund.
No, I just meant,
This
I meant,
is,
I meant,
once you're approved, we're gonna be going after the holidays, we'll be sitting down with engineering and then USDA and starting that process. It's a multi-tiered meeting where they have criteria they want to make sure that you meet. We already have a staff member from USDA that's appointed to us. And so those conversations start budding and framing it of term, all the whole scope of the project. Yes.
I saw somewhere in there in the language, something about water mains, but is that really talking about service lines or?
No,
we have new mains?
there's still possibility that it could expand to some mains. Part of that state
Would be
revolving
the
fund
closing
ask.
of loops?
Well, yeah, loop systems are critical in small infrastructure or any infrastructure, especially water for that matter, but. There is a potential that part of that project from the state revolving fund was to expand the 4-inch mains in the neighborhood of Princeton. Partridge, Sunset, in that neighborhood. All of our mains were designed in the 70s and implemented with 4-inch mains. Grossly inadequate for proper flow. So part of that state revolving fund, and it could fold over into USDA, is since we're already going to be ripping up 3 roads to replace every single service. Why wouldn't you do it all in one foul swoop and increase those mains? But that goes to the point of capacity. In those terms, I mean, yes, main improvement for proper fire flows and drinking water capacity, but they look at all the parameters, not just water tanks for capacity, but what are the size of your mains and how much water do you have in your system at any given time? And so that's the capacity that you can build upon.
Measured by drops.
Yep, and there's also other discussions at points of connectivity that I've had conversations with in terms of circular infrastructure. Our biggest deficit in terms of mass and sizable infrastructure is main bypass between Bagley and 32 and Long Rapids and Bagley. We don't have a water main in that stretch. But that's part of that ongoing conversation. Does it make sense to actually not only put a main and make sure that we have a separate system for all intent and purpose, but increase our capacity by having a main? So, nope, things to be, there'll be numerous meetings before this really comes to the board in full effect. So any other questions? If not, roll call, please.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
yes,
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward to budget adjustments. Before you, you have a list of budget adjustments. In all 3 principal categories, and at this point in time, unless there's any questions, to any of the budget adjustments as presented, I'd recommend a motion to move forward with the budget adjustments as presented.
so moved.
We have a motion on the table to move forward with the budget adjustments. Is there support? Support. It's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes,
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yeah.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward to fire. Chief, if you'd like to take podium, new business 4 on new hire.
Good evening, everybody. Personnel Committee did a round of interviews. We brought this gentleman in for a second round of interviews. The committee would like to well, the committee recommended to me that I bring before the board to offer Mr. Ryan Mendika, a full-time firefighter. He's an EMT position pending his township physical. He's already passed his physical agilities test. So we got that step out of the way.
I just want to clarify, you are also recommending hiring this person, or do you not recommend?
The whole committee
Are you,
recommended.
okay,
you're
but
not on
you're
it.
not on the committee. What is your recommendation as chief?
I'm going to follow the township personnel committee's recommendations on this one. We need the people.
So it is your recommendation to the board that we hire him?
I guess if that's the way you want to put it, yeah, I mean, it was a committee decision, I guess. So whatever way you want to slice it, we definitely need the people. So
Wouldn't the procedure be that the chief brings it to the personnel and then the personnel committee brings it to us with him making the presentation, including his recommendation?
Yeah,
Okay.
but we have before us a recommendation to bring forward Ryan, it's Mendika.
Mendika,
Mendika.
that's how they
My
pronounce it.
apologies, Ryan. We have a recommendation to bring on Ryan for our full-time position. Is there a motion to?
I'll
the
make that
recommendation?
motion.
We have a motion on the table to the recommendation. Is there support? Support. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Yes.
I'd like next time, though, that you bring in a person for a recommendation, that the board get an opportunity to look at some of the paperwork that.
I will own that. Norm, I forgot to email out his application to everybody. That's on me.
Okay.
On me.
We do background checks beforehand.
Yes.
Yeah, cool hand Luke down to my port side. He just,
I was gonna say, I don't keep
Doesn't
any
mind.
paperwork. That all goes to the township clerk.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that access.
okay, so we have a motion and support barring any further discussion. Roll call, please.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Okay, moving forward, Chief.
We had a bill here from R&R for $1,292.99. Engine 2 had a brake chamber failure. We had to do an emergency repair on that. And this is the outcome of that bill. Supervisor Skibby was called immediately once we knew what happened, just to let him know that we got that vehicle back in service that same night. So that's my recommendation to pay the bill off to R&R for the $1,292.99.
Out of 938,000 vehicle maintenance.
Yes.
Okay, we have a recommendation to move forward with the expenditure of $1,292.99 to utilize GL 205-336-938-000.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Further discussion? Yes, Trustee Polly.
This on our engine that we owe like one more payment on.
We don't own a payment on it, but yes, it is one and the same. We're actually satisfied that note this year in this budget
Done?
cycle.
It's all paid for.
Correct.
It would be engine 2, just for your reference.
Okay.
The one
Okay,
that's that south side.
that's correct.
Yeah, so it's not the engine that we just
No,
bought.
not the engine. Sorry.
Okay.
No, I do, because this is easy.
Was this an accident or was this a part failure?
Just a wear and tear failure.
The other accidents have already gone to insurance.
They'll be coming. to
They'll
the
be coming
board
to the board
because
eventually.
It's the
So
deductible.
that's all
So
part of
we
the.
have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. And moving forward to the training requests.
Before you, I have training requests from Luke Meisner and Ed Hoskinson. Their training is attached. And you'll see the information for their classes. This is something they're entitled to if money permits under their union contract. Very good training that they're both signed up for. It's my recommendation that we go ahead. Really, the only out-of-pocket cost for us is the books for Ed's class. and the 2 24-hour replacement shifts to cover them while they're in training. It's my recommendation that you approve them for their training assignments.
We have a recommendation from Chief to move forward with two training opportunities for both Mr. Meiser and Mr. Hoskinson. With one expenditure for $77.95 for the cost of books to be utilized at a GL 205-336-969-020.
So is the training out of town?
Yeah,
So they're gonna miss a whole 24-hour shift for it?
but we're gonna be filling their shift with overtime to make that
We
happen.
have to fill the whole 24-hour shift with overtime? They can't like go to training and then come back?
Right.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
I believe they're both out of town.
Josh is shaking his head no at me. That's fine.
Ed is not,
I mean, we do it all the time here, go to training for 4 or 5 hours, they come back. and
Ed's is out of
start.
town. I believe Luke's is out of town as well. Let me just double check that.
I thought it said it was.
Ed's is in Hillman, somebody.
If we start identifying him as out of town.
Saginaw, why don't they both go to Hillman?
And different trainings.
Oh, it's not the same class.
It's not the
No.
same.
It's hard to understand.
Oh, I
Okay.
didn't get that. Okay.
Yeah, no, two different training opportunities with
Okay.
one direct cost and two indirect costs by having coverage, but question did pop up. If it's in Hillman, there's one potential for you to look at, because if it's not a 24-hour out of town training and he only needs 8 hours. That could be something to be discussed.
I guess I don't understand why. If someone's going to training during their regular shift, you have someone come in and cover while they're at training. We're not gonna pay them for 24 hours if they go home after the training.
So as far as I
We
know,
would only pay them for that time they were in training then. Right?
Or they come back to.
I know Ed's training is a 5-day training. So he's going off the cuff for everything else out of his own pocket.
I
And
guess
but
this wasn't presented in a.
Yeah, but Ed's, just a point of clarification, Ed's is actually, that 5-day training is in Hillman.
That's correct.
Yeah, because I think that's the topic of conversation. I guess we can look into that and ask Lizzie how the interpretation of the union contract is. But maybe something for you to think about, mitigate costs.
And Ed's is for 5 days, so Ed could drive back and forth from Hillman,
Right,
right?
right.
And not be gone a whole 24 hours. Where Luke will be in Saginaw, so. I mean, by the time you drive down and
Right.
Right.
sure.
he's there's overnight stay with his or the mileage or.
His is actually a 2-day class. He only requested 24 hours from us.
Or what about the hotel room or mileage?
He's gonna forgo that because he's gonna stay with family. So
and my-
these guys try to save
I'm just saying,
wherever
it's
they
just-
can, and I appreciate that because we're really tight. But so that's a good point. I can talk to Ed about that day.
Maybe something for you to have considerations and discussions about.
Right.
So can I ask a question? I was just curious because on Luke's, it says to get certified in the gold standard of trauma care, info on back. Med Control wants every responder like to be that get that certification.
That's,
So is that coming for the others?
that's a goal I hear that's coming. So he's trying to get ahead of the curve. And it fits his situation where he's able to stay with relatives, take the training.
It'd
So
be nice-
Luke will be one of the first in the department, not one of the, not catching up with others.
That's correct.
Be great if they could do the training up here.
Well, that's where we run into a lot of problems. There's a couple chiefs here that know that just trying to get something into your area is like pulling teeth sometimes.
Even in Gaylord.
And then there's a cost. I mean, there's a cost, whoever hosts it, so.
So we do, is there a motion to the recommendation?
I'll make the motion.
We have a motion to move forward with the training of both Mr. Beiser and Mr. Hoskinson with one direct cost of books of $77.95.
I'll support it.
And we have support. Further discussion?
We put something in there about
You,
the 24-hour shifts. Or,
further, if you would like to
'Cause that's-
amend your friendly motion, yeah.
well,
I
because
mean,
that is part of a cost. It's not straight pay. It's, if we're paying somebody overtime, that's an additional cost.
So then just add it to your motion in regards to
Right.
explore staffing.
Right, just,
And then if you're friendly to that,
Yes, to explore
Uh,
staffing options. Or staffing alternative.
just to help cover it or however,
Yeah, I'm,
if it's possible.
Ed's on shift. I actually thought he was gonna be over here, but he would have been able to answer
Just
something.
to investigate. That's all I just.
Yep. So we have a motion
Right.
and support.
Yeah, 'cause it sounds like we're paying someone to come home after their training.
It does seem a little slighted. When we verbalize it out loud, 8 hours is not equal to 24.
Right.
We have motion support, barring any further discussion, roll call please.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly,
Yes.
clerk Flavich, yes, treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes.
Yeah.
And moving forward, tonight, we actually have with us, Mr. Bill Duquette, with Halt. And so, sir, if you'd like to take the podium. In everybody's packet is, started the process after, fire committee, put together and pulled together, what they were looking at for pumper tanker, went through Sourcewell, followed all their protocols, emailed this list to, I think, 5 or 6 within the state of Michigan, representative sales institutions for fire apparatus. Heard back from a couple, but Mr. Duquette is the one that grabbed the ball and ran with it. And so, Mr. Duquette, if you would like to introduce yourself and kind of
Okay.
what we're looking at.
We'll kind of go through it a little bit here. First of all, my name's Bill Duquette. I sell for Pierce Fire Apparatus. I've been a salesman for about 24 years, and I'm also the fire chief in East Tawas, so, and a retired second grade school teacher.
Oh, wow.
This is kind of an interesting time to be buying anything. As you can tell, prices, I mean, it's a good time and it's a bad time to buy a fire truck. If you had bought it 2 years ago, it would have been thousands of dollars less. Right now is a good time to buy because there are some things on the horizon that are going to make the costs go even higher. So just real briefly on that, we have some NFPA changes that are coming up that add cost to the truck, but luckily for Pierce, one of a big issue was some vehicle stability things that were added, and we already had that in our truck, so that was nice. That's going to hurt the competition more than us. But the other big thing coming is the 27 emission standards, and with this is the truck that we're looking at is on a commercial chassis on a Freightliner, and right now they're still able to come out with those chassis with the engines in them that have the current emission standard. When those run out, like they have for, if you were to buy a custom truck today, we have to put the newer emission standard in it. The cost of that engine alone, just the engine, went up $95,000 to meet the new emission standard. So I'm not sure who's going to be able to afford a truck anymore, but so that makes it a good time to buy a truck. So Pierce generally, in the olden days before COVID, I would always say we have 100 stock trucks that are built, ready to go that you can purchase. Anything from tankers to ladder trucks to pumpers, whatever you wanted. When everything started going crazy with pricing, people started buying the stock trucks up. Now we have none. We have none available. And what we used to be able to do is find out when one was coming out in the future. They would tell us, okay, in a month, this one's going to be on the stock list, and we would have all the information. Now there are 300 salesmen that sell Pierce trucks across the United States. There are so many of those waiting for those trucks. They say, we're not going to give you a heads up anymore. So we are looking at a truck, and for the past 6 months, there have been at least 1 or 2 of these each month that came out on the stock list. About 3 months ago, I looked at one for a department. I emailed them and said, is this something you'd like to take to your board? And I clicked send and I closed it, and a sold stock notice came up. Someone bought it. So that's the way it's been going. So what I talked about with your supervisor is doing a purchase order. I kind of snuck around through the back door and found out that the next stock list is going to come out at 1 o'clock on the 2nd of January. So what we would propose is, if you wanted that truck, give me the purchase order and I would set at the computer, and the second that stock list came up, I would send it in. So then we would have that truck, secured. So from that point, then there are things that you want to add to the truck. So we always start a drop and add list from the time you purchase the truck or get it secured. So then you could look at the things that you needed to add to the truck. So once again, those things are expensive. A few years ago, you could have bought a lot more. Departments are finding out that they probably can't get everything that they need right at the present time on that truck, but yet we still want to get enough to help the department to help through that. So I'm not sure, did the list I give you had some prices on it?
I'm trying to say,
Like,
we tried to
this-
condense because it was such a.
Okay, so
There's,
basically, and I don't have to go through all those,
A lot
but
of them were
generally, those are prices that the customer would not see, but because you're doing this through Sourcewell, you could get into Sourcewell because that's what you can do instead of a bid. When you have Sourcewell, it's like being a member of Sam's Club. So it allows you to get into that and see all those prices. So that's why I put it down, because it's generally, you wouldn't see them, but since you're going through Sourcewell, you'd see them anyway. So the
You,
truck-
you do, I do believe, sir, and I pardon for the interruption,
sure.
but I do believe that on page 8 of that document, you actually have the net due of $368,000.
Okay, yep, and that's not quite accurate because that was the part due to Pierce. So that from there, then things get added on, like it goes to UL for testing, so they have that money gets added on, then the profit for halt fire and the salesman's commission all gets added onto that. So actually, if you look on page 7, you'll see what that truck sold for was $433,620, but that's everything that's on this list. But also what we don't see is they had some loose equipment in that also. So I'm not sure how much loose equipment, but we're trying to get under that amount. So I would, I'd be thinking maybe that list that I gave you originally had some hose and stuff on it. Maybe it had some of that in there.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
see-
you put in, I believe, a valve,
Yeah,
PFT valve.
yeah. So,
And then also 500 linear foot of 5-inch.
right. So I would be thinking that would get it closer to this 433,620.
Yeah.
We were saying we were trying to get into the 425 range. So some of the things on that list we can do, but we're not going to get all the way to the bottom. But those, like I said, if you don't secure the truck, then that's-
Securing is the
so-
first step, obviously, as Mr. Duquette said, if we don't have an engine or in line for a pumper tanker, come January 1, unless we can maybe get in line for another commercial chassis that might come and be available. We're adding another $95,000 to the end less price, so yes.
Has this gone to fire committee? Have they reviewed it?
No, this came from fire committee and all the list of parts.
fire committee did look at it. but
So the
it
fire-
was-
Has
This
the
was,
fire committee
uh,
looked at this
this-
together or no?
No, haven't said.
We
But I can-
printed it off the agenda this morning, or I printed it off the agenda this morning, so we're going through the list. We do have some questions, but. that-
Mark, you're gotta get up by the microphone.
So it's on the
So it's on
recording.
record.
All right. That being said, we have some things on the list that, that we would talk to the salesman about, Bill, here. But I definitely think if you're gonna make a move on the truck, if you wait until February or whatever, you're going up another $100,000 basically on a truck. But I do believe it would be a great look for the fire committee or the truck committee, maybe to get together after this is looked at, because there's some things in here just simply, this bid spec still shows the high-rise sides on the truck.
Yeah.
We don't need the high-rise sides, but we need a ladder rack and we need a drop tank rack. Those are the things that the committee would pick off and.
Which we've already picked it. So I mean, it
So-
can go back to
No,
committee,
I'm
but I
just-
would like to
I-
err on the fact that all the data that was compiled to get to this point came from 5 previous RFPs that were never board sponsored. And so we have fire committee and employees, all their lists, but Mark, we sat and had that conversation. Is it identified as the hydraulic arm for the drop tank, and what other thing did we touch on? Oh, the heater thing. Some common sense things that need to be added.
So are we committing to purchasing?
Right now, we're committing to a purchase order of a truck without a final destination
Or
in
price.
terms of a price. All we have is a comparable of 433, 620, 24.
So where would we come up
But
with?
this would be, so the remainder in the math that I was running with what we have available from fire equipment millage monies is just shy of $360,000. So we're looking at a rough aggregate, if we can stay in that 425 range, a rough aggregate of having to potentially borrow 60,000. Which isn't that bad in the big scheme of things. I haven't had those conversations with LP Now Corner. We use them as a borrowing lending institution prior. Pierce has an internal operation that could potentially, but I think they would prefer to obviously finance the whole thing and not.
You remember we had to do it through that installment sale.
Yeah, there's a whole process,
But they were hit great.
but they were super helpful.
Right.
Yes, trustee Reiner.
So, the whole, so we're committing to a purchase order without a dollar amount in it, or.
For all intent and purpose, until it's finalized, as Mr. Duquette said, I mean, there's a couple things that need to be tweaked. There's also on the back end of it is, I was given the information to reach out to yet another third-party institution to offset and potentially sell E3 and our existing tanker, whatever values those have. So those could be actually used to leverage against.
I know what I also meant to ask was, does this zero out then the millage
Yeah.
Yeah.
fund?
This would be like I said, I think it's 359 and change that's in that.
So I just for my own head, this would be a truck that would be built for what we want. It's not something already.
No, it's gonna be a stock build, I think.
Well, the
That's what my
frame, the
question.
chassis is a commercial. So you have commercial or custom.
So is it kind of like
Here we
our,
go again.
our-
Yeah, you're-
our
yeah.
engine-
again.
kind of when we ordered our engine and we said that it was built kind of for us of what we want.
So
This
Some-
this
something
is still
similar.
built to what we want.
It'll be spec.
It's just,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not a custom cab, custom frame. It's,
Okay.
here's a generic Freightliner chassis, engine, powertrain. And then the remainder of it is put
and then
together by
Pierce builds the
Pierce
back end of it.
to our
The cabin
specifications.
chassis
Yeah.
and then, yeah.
And the advantage to going through the stock program is this has already been through Pierce Engineering, so this truck will be done in May or June.
That was
If
gonna
you
be
were
my
to
question.
order a truck, if you said, I want to build to order, and I just did this on the other side of the state, the build time now is up to 24 to 28 months. We just did the ladder truck in Traverse City, and it's 4 years until it's done, just because of what's going on. So a stock truck, you're gonna get in a few months.
So but that raises a question, in a few months, if these NFDA, you said they're gonna increase some specs that we might have to build. What are the chances that those will be requirements before we get this truck?
Well, the changes take effect January 1st. So we had to talk about, one of the things that added is a backup camera. So that was an interesting question that Supervisor Skibby brought up, because at what point, and the way it was worded was it needs a backup camera, anything that comes out the door after January 1st, but then when you're ready, it kind of sounded like if it was ordered before January 1st. So that was just the simplest question, threw them into a tizzy, and then they went on vacation for the rest of the year. So I didn't get an answer on that, but the other things don't affect us because we already have the stability control, which was the big ticket item. So that was,
They don't
those are the two main.
Come
things.
with a backup camera, just, I mean, to me, that would make sense on
I
a
don't think
fire.
our new truck will.
Yeah.
But I mean, it
The
just
new
makes,
truck does.
it makes sense that it would have a cam, I mean. But anyway,
So the long and short is, do we have a final price? No, because there are variables at play. What we do have is a very truncated timeline. If whether or not we don't approve putting our foot in and getting in line to buy a ticket for a truck,
We're 2 years
that's
down the
slowly
road.
slipping away. And so knowing that we've been ongoing having this conversation in need of the replacement of a pumper tanker for the past 7 years that I've been in office. Especially when you have an accelerant such as NFPA's new engine and exhaust standards that would have to be met when they complete their line of commercial. Now, who knows when that would be? It's not gonna be February, but it could be in this next fiscal, whenever they run out of that and they have to build them to those standards. Then we're just that much further behind. Things aren't getting any cheaper.
The only thing I would say is if there are other pieces that we need that, then we probably should sit down and get that
Yeah.
done. And get this all done in one shot. Make sure it fits our need.
Well, we don't have to commit to every and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. We don't have to identify every single nut and bolt. What you need actually is just an agreement from this body saying, we want the next truck. We'll identify a final price with the remainder of our want list.
What we would do with that purchase order is we would secure the truck, and then from there, we start the drop and add list, and we have pretty good list started.
Yep.
And then, actually, until that stock list comes out, because we're not sure what the chassis costs, because they buy them each month. So that may have gone up a little bit from this one sample that we're looking at here. So there may be a little bit of difference there. But then after that January 2nd price comes out, then you'll know if you, for example, if you made your purchase order to say not to exceed, whatever, 430 or whatever, then you would know how much you had left to go down that list. Or if the fire chief said, we really have to have a widget, then, well, maybe you could add that into another purchase, whatever, however you wanted to do that. But the only thing the purchase order would do is allow me at 1 o'clock on the 2nd is to say, we want that truck. And then from there, you start the drop and add list for all the other things. And we can't really do it before, we don't know the price. So,
Yes, Michelle.
What exactly is the motion you're looking for? Because you're looking for a motion.
Well, we need to have a motion, because
Okay.
Pierce would want to have an emotion that we have a commitment to potentially buy the next available commercial Freightliner chassis for a pumper tanker.
Yep.
Is this something that generic satisfactory?
uh,
Because we can't say, or we could say
if
not
that
to
allows-
exceed.
If that allowed you to just give me a purchase order then.
Yeah.
Based
Yeah.
on the.
Not to exceed. I like.
If you would like to, I mean,
What is the amount that you don't
I'm
want
gonna put it
to?
into-
435, I think.
I mean, right now we have, just so everybody's brains can wrap numbers, we currently have roughly $360,000 from the equipment village still available for that.
Can you do not to exceed 450?
Okay.
Are you
Make
making
a
a motion?
You want to make a
Make the
motion?
motion. You can do whatever you-
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, 450,000.
I move-
I'll support it.
So we have a motion on the table. Point of clarification, could you read the motion? for the-
Well, not really. I've got it.
No, we have a motion on the table to proceed with purchase of a Pierce pumper tanker not to exceed $450,000.
To commit to a
From,
purchase order.
Pierce Hall is the sales company.
what is the name of the sales company?
It's Hall Fire Supplies.
Correct.
Or,
Alt Fire
Like
Incorporated.
HALT.
Correct.
To be paid with millage equipment money?
yep, and to finance the remaining balance or continue to have conversation, something to that effect. Because I have not reached out to Alpina Okona, so there's some variables. What are the potential sale prices? What can we offset with the sale of E3 and the pumper tanker? Pumper tanker, its only inherent value is the stainless steel tank on the back end of it.
What is E3?
That's engine 3, that is the chartreuse bomber.
Okay.
Yep, that we got, I believe, from CRTC.
Yeah, come from the federals.
Is that tank in good shape on the envelope?
It's stainless steel. It's
I know a maple syrup guy.
yeah, well. Giddy up. He doesn't have any existing blight on his property, all right? Like, I don't want this. Anyways, so we have a motion and support. And is everybody clear with the motion? Not to exceed 450, to utilize 360 out of existing equipment millage monies. Discussion to follow with financing options for the remaining balance. There's no other discussion, roll call.
Trustee Reiner,
Yes.
trustee Polly.
Yeah.
Clerk Palovich, yeah. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yeah.
You're trying to take my dramatic thoughts of me?
You're gonna get the clown. Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Moving forward, and we just got these and everybody, I don't know if anybody's even had time, but we do have on the agenda staffing options.
Now I know.
So if you just want to intro number 8, I think it's going to do best to behoove the board to really kind of bring this back in conversation. Having, for some of the members only receiving it today.
Oh, really?
Well, I didn't come last week.
Oh,
I
okay,
didn't
I
know
was
when
gonna
they
say,
were
'cause I-
closed and I didn't had too much other things going on.
This doesn't involve staffing options, but I just want to introduce a new potential candidate, trainee. It's Shane Tomchek. We're looking at trying to get him a physical fitness test and get him started as a cadet, basically, and new trainee. So I'll let you know how that goes. Gave him all the doctor paperwork today, so
Welcome. Glad you're here.
anyhow,
So are
Can
we,
I
are
have
we-
one second, sir?
are we in the options?
That's
Okay, I
technically,
just have a comment to everybody. After sitting here and public comment from Mr. Johnson, and then we're hiring F&V because we're not experts in the water to do the application and to let us know what needs to be done in our water system. None of us at this table are experts on fire departments either, and I'm just thinking we should consider hiring the consultant.
Look at Norm
And get some
smile.
expert opinion. Cause I'm am not an expert in any of this. I'm not an expert on. I think there's so many variables because we are so unique in the size of our township, having 2 stations. I just want to throw that out there for everybody to just kind of think about.
And I had a comment along the same, well, somewhat the same. In that I don't see this as staffing options. I see this as organizational discussion. I mean, we're talking here about reconfiguring the fire department in one way or another. I mean, there's all the way up to a new station with one station, you know,
Mhm.
so, you know, it's not just staffing. It's more than that.
It's like the whole department.
I believe it is.
and I will tell you, you're absolutely right, trustee Reiner. There's my revisions of what we started with and all the different work that got us to this point.
And
And you're right.
And I appreciate I mean, I've skimmed through this and I appreciate the detail that's been put into this.
But there's not too much
Work.
detail, which is nice too. Because it
Yeah, it's
simplified-
that bit.
Oh, right, because
Well, and that's where I started. We
Right.
started with a lot of information with Michelle and Cash, and Nathan's like, no, take that out, take that out, take it out. So I started with a pretty thick document and we got it down to a pretty thin document. So,
in smaller font.
yeah.
So,
Justin, right?
you're-
I have to have glasses.
so are there, I mean, I don't know, are there fire department consultants?
Yes.
So there are in Michigan,
They've
or-
been brought to this board prior.
I don't remember that.
you're not talking about.
No.
Forget.
No, there's.
But
all
we
kinds
haven't
of
actually had.
third party.
a-
We never went that.
We've never hired somebody and
no.
actually had them do a study and say, wow, to have this ISO rating or anything.
Yeah, no.
Since you folks have been on the board.
No,
Yeah.
not since I've been on the board.
So,
And
so I mean, we kind of got one conversation on 2 different tracks. We're basically receiving and filing the options that were brought forward, but am I hearing that we should give consideration to do you want recommendations of various consultant companies to come back to this board? To really interpret not just the
I
staffing.
think it'd be
option,
nice
but
to have
look at-
that option when we are
Well,
reviewing, having
See
discussion.
what, if it's within a reasonable cost. But I don't know what it would cost.
Yeah,
Norm?
Do we want a consultant? Do we need a consultant? Is that what you're asking?
we're asking what your thoughts are, Norm.
You can't, you gotta have an expert come up with what we're looking at, and we just can't do it on our own. We need that help. So wherever you go and whatever you do.
I mean, it's been something you've been talking about for a long time.
Well, it's not me, it's this board. Yeah. So it's got this.
No, I know, I just mean you brought it up to the board and we've
Huh.
all discussed it, right?
So I guess they're in. I mean, if it's the board's wish, I can bring forward, but I looked at the board for direction.
I mean, it doesn't hurt, I guess, to get a.
Kind
quote or-
of cost or something.
So like, do we need a motion to have you get 2 or 3 costs of different
Bring it back to this
consultants? Or-
board.
I mean, because it might be totally out of our budget. It might be,
It may.
Yeah, we're not making a commitment.
we're not making a
No,
commitment to the
No,
study,
you're
we're just getting some.
affording me to go and bring back.
Yeah, so I'll make that motion.
Okay. I'll support it.
Do we want it? Does it matter when?
For me just to go out and garner consulting services quotes for basically looking at staffing options versus, I mean, we're just geographically challenged in numerous ways. And so what does it look like You know, we're not just 9 square miles with infrastructure at every corner. We have everything from infrastructure and hydrants to drafting locations to a hope and a prayer in the middle of a farm field or a forested area with a lot of people in those areas. I mean, there's
So we have a
A
lot of
million
unique
variables.
things to our township.
a million variables. Yeah, I mean, we've tried to address even some of it in our zoning ordinance of driveway road standards that have the accomplishment of affording an emergency vehicle ingress and egress. I mean, so we're trying to improve, but that's just in an ordinance. So we have a motion,
I
we have
support
support, just to bring back quotes of
fire department.
fire. Yeah, I mean,
And what, I guess they would give us a little write-up of what they would be
yeah,
looking
what
at.
services they provide. for-
Correct, correct. What's,
So kind of like what we did with Lex Bowles for train. What are those and what are those grant writing scenarios? Yeah, well, there's a motion and support, further discussion.
Do we want to have this by a certain time frame, couple months or?
I mean, I can try to get it back for
the February
the
meeting?
February meeting. If not, the January.
In the meantime, we can look at these even.
Yeah.
Right.
Everybody can review these.
There's a
yeah.
lot to digest. Most definitely. It's not gonna be fair to anybody to try to have a fair and accurate conversation about the staffing options, especially when some haven't had 24 hours to even decipher, so.
And in the meantime, if people have questions on,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure the chief would be available to answer them, so.
So, barring any discussion, well, roll call, is there? Well, there's no cost in getting quotes.
No.
All those in favor of securing quotes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Vote is unanimous, and that concludes new business at this point in time. I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session.
In regard to water
You want me to read it?
Yes, Michelle's got a beautiful one.
That the town, I make a motion, the township enter into closed session to consult with the township attorney regarding trial strategy in the water and sewer rate litigation pending before the Alpena County Circuit Court pursuant to MCL 15.268(1)(e).
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Yes.
It's been moved and supported. Further discussion?
It was rough.
That was Russ.
Okay,
Support?
yes.
Nice to meet you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'll wait for Ms. Michelle.
Does he need a letter or anything, or that can be tomorrow?
I can email you.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
Okay.
Remember my fire.
He'll ask.
This guy, the ISO guy, can you give it for nothing? Grant Service County paid $7,000 to have a consultant come in, and he gave them more information than the guy did for $7,000, so.
I'll be in touch with you.
Sit down and talk to you, because if you got, at least you'll know what you can do to lower the ISO, and then from there, that helps how we need for staffing, so. And
Beautiful.
he's free, so.
Hey, that's
Well, we
beautiful.
can-
That's one of the
we can
best
say
4-letter words in the world.
Yeah, we can spend an extra 7,000.
All right, thank you.
Safe travels, Mr. DeKalb. Thank you again.
Thank you.
So we have
We
a
get
motion
new
and
tires.
support to go into closed session. Roll call.
Clerk Flavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. We're now officially. Are we good? We are now officially in open session. And I'd entertain.
I make a motion that the township board enter in closed session to discuss confidential written legal opinion.
We have a motion on the table to go into closed session. Is there support?
Yes.
Been moved and supported. Further discussion? Seeing none, roll call please.
Clerk Flavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Reiner.
Yes.
Trustee Polly.
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. 7:54, we're officially in closed session. Are we in? We're officially in open session. This is the second opportunity for public comment. If there's any public comment online, please use the bottom taskbar under the ellipsis and more to raise your hand or send a message. So we can identify you and your comment. Again, this is the last opportunity for public comment in this evening's regularly scheduled board meeting. Seeing no public comment, any further discussion for the good of the order? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion on the table to adjourn. Is there support?
Or
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, oppose the same. Meeting adjourned at 9:19 PM. Thank you very much.